As frustrating as this topic is to cover due to the ongoing disregard of human life in Gaza, it does appear that the dam may be breaking on the reality of Israel's genocide in Gaza, as two key shifts in the narrative have led to a situation where one former president has seemingly come out of retirement, the Canadian Prime Minister is now saying something different, and even Trump is in some way acknowledging the reality of what is going on, though to be clear, no policy has changed as of yet. That said, I do want to go over the. I guess this is breaking news in the sense that it's a moment right now where we are witnessing finally some change in terms of what people in positions of power are saying, and that I believe is at least partly due to what I'll get to later with Emmanuel Macron, France, but also today with the acknowledgement from two Israel based human rights organizations that Israel is committing a genocide. And the headlines that this is making, I hope, will lead to an ongoing shift in the narrative around the reality of that genocide. So, to start here, I just think it's worth sharing this headline from a year ago from CNN. Israeli minister says it may be moral to starve 2 million Gazans, but no one in the world would let us. They were openly calling for this at least a year ago. Of course, you can go well back to the beginning of this. It was clear what they were doing. But out in the open saying, hey, it's moral for us to starve them, but the world wouldn't let us. Except that they did. So, Gaza suffering man-made mass starvation, says World Health Organization chief. As The Guardian writes here, Gaza is suffering man-made mass starvation caused by the blockade of aid into the territory. The head of the World Health Organization has said as more than 100 agencies urged Israel to let supplies in to alleviate the crisis. A letter signed by 109 agencies, including Doctors Without Borders, Oxfam International, and Amnesty International, says the Israeli government is blocking humanitarian organizations from effectively distributing life-saving aid. This has been going on for a while now. The reporting on this has been clear. Yet leaders in positions of power that have been aligned with the Israeli government generally have been unwilling to come to terms with this in a way that would actually help to shift policy in Israel. So from Common Dreams, according to a statement from UNICEF on Sunday, quote, the entire population of over 2 million people in Gaza is severely food insecure. 1 out of every 3 people has not eaten for days, and 80% of all reported deaths by starvation are children. Virtually all of Gaza's population of 2 million has been displaced, with 92% of residential buildings destroyed or damaged. The people of Gaza overwhelmingly live without water and electricity as infrastructure has been destroyed. So, worth noting, Israeli citizens, I could show polls here as well. It's been clear that they have been in support of what their government has been doing largely. There's also been those further extreme within Israel that, as of a year ago, were blocking and destroying aid being delivered into Gaza, but that's been happening more recently as well. Hard to know how to react to that. So this from PBS. This is the news that I think can potentially lead to a global narrative shift, at least in terms of lawmakers, people in power, because the public already appears to be well aware of this. I'm talking, Canadians, Americans. I haven't seen polling from Europe and the UK, but I imagine it's similar, if not clearer. But now you have acknowledgement from 2 Israeli human rights organizations saying their country is committing a genocide. So the 2 organizations are B'Tselem and Physicians for Human Rights Israel. Now, this is making international headlines. CNN World here, for the first time, 2 leading Israeli human rights groups accuse Israel of genocide in Gaza. Headline as well in the New York Times, as well as a headline in the Washington Post. It often takes a moment like this for others to be willing to acknowledge the reality. Because there has been this ongoing, insane narrative that criticizing the Israeli government is somehow anti-Semitic, which I feel like I don't have to explain how stupid that is, because I've done it so many times. Criticizing a government cannot inherently be offensive. You are criticizing the actions of a government. So now that you have Israel-based human rights organizations recognizing this reality, and it's getting publicized widely, I would hope this will lead to an ongoing shift in how this is discussed more broadly. Let me play for you a clip from B'Tselem's announcement of this, and I'll link to their full video below as well.
לאורך ההיסטוריה, רוב העמים שביצעו ג'נוסייד לא הבינו והכירו בזמן אמת את המשמעות של מה שהם עושים. וזה בדיוק מה שקורה עכשיו בישראל. כל זה רק מגביר את המחויבות שלנו להעיד על הדברים כמו שהם, ולקרוא באופן ברור לכל מי ששומע אותנו, לעשות הכל כדי לעצור את זה.
אנשים וממשלות צריכים לנקוט בכל הפעולות שעומדות לרשותם במסגרת החוק הבינלאומי, כדי לגרום לממשלת ישראל להפסיק את הג'נוסייד ברצועת עזה עכשיו.
So again, I'll link to their full 8-minute video below. It's worth watching if you want a full comprehensive breakdown of why they came to this conclusion. But a quote here from the report, Common Dreams quoting this here, saying, following the examination of 20 months of data, the group wrote that Israel's military onslaught on Gaza has included mass killings, both directly and through creating unlivable conditions, serious bodily or mental harm to an entire population, decimation of basic infrastructure throughout the strip, and forcible displacement on a huge scale, with ethnic cleansing added to the list of official war objectives. And the other group, Physicians for Human Rights, wrote this in their report. Over the past 22 months, Israel has systematically targeted medical infrastructure across the Gaza Strip, attacking 33 of 36 Gaza's hospitals and clinics, depriving them of fuel and water. More than 1,800 of Gaza's medical staff have been killed or detained. It's unfortunate it took this long to come to this conclusion. You have groups like Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, have already came to this conclusion over a year ago. That said, it's important this is out now, and this has the potential to shift the whole narrative on what's been going on. So this is where we get to how Israel has been deflecting for the past couple of years, how they keep getting away with this. So this UN headline here is perfect. UN warns of catastrophic hunger in Gaza as Israel announces humanitarian pauses. These humanitarian pauses, oh, don't worry, we're going to deliver some aid during these pauses, have been a way for them to try and claim that they are helping. Which, let's step back for a second. They're the ones committing a genocide. Yet, they're also the ones that are supposedly helping the people of Gaza, while they're the ones creating the conditions on the ground that is the genocide that they are. Like, the whole thing is so twisted. But this gets to a fantastic clip, to my surprise, from the BBC here on the clarity around what Netanyahu's government does in their ability to deflect from criticism with these humanitarian pauses.
I was wondering if you see a parallel with the way Russia deals with Ukraine and pressure, because at moments where the international community is most outraged, we constantly see Putin muddy the water, offer talks, that sort of thing. It's distraction, and it then allows for a time for temperatures to cool, and then we see a continuation of the policy. I wonder if that is what we're seeing from Benjamin Netanyahu, where we're talking about humanitarian pauses or airdrops, the same tactic.
I think that's very insightful, actually. And when it comes to the airdrops, I realize that some people will want the airdrops to go forward because they think, well, at least it's something, and something is better than nothing. And I completely appreciate that. But the reality is that the airdrops are the most ineffective way of getting any aid into Gaza. You can have these incredibly expensive airdrops take place, and they don't even bring in the equivalent of 2 trucks. Whereas what Gaza needs at bare minimum is anything from 600 trucks a day upwards in order to simply bring the population to a livable kind of condition. But the the announcement of airdrops, the announcement of letting in some aid, even if that aid is, less than 1% of what's actually needed, provides Netanyahu and his government the ability to say that they've done something in response to international demands that they take action. But actually, it's still not doing what's necessary on the ground. And the ongoing policy of trying to get Palestinians to move from the north and from the center of Gaza further down south into, quote unquote, a camp where Palestinians would be concentrated. Okay, this is what the Israelis themselves are talking about. Is still going on. You have Palestinians who are still being killed as they approach these humanitarian depots run by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. You still have dozens of people being killed every day. That hasn't stopped.
Israel has been intentionally, knowingly, having these humanitarian pauses, the ability for trucks to deliver some aid as a way to deflect from their ongoing successful genocide in Gaza. It has allowed them to get to this point. So anyone who has been defending the Israeli government up till now, they've been helping the Palestinians as they continue to destroy them in mass slaughter. Anyone who's been reporting that or parroting those talking points are just completely insane. It's clear what's been going on, that to the point where you even have now Israel-based human rights organizations recognizing that fact. This gets to the reaction from some lawmakers. Or I guess world leaders. Donald Trump was asked about the starvation in Gaza. Here's how he reacted.
President Prime Minister Netanyahu said there's no starvation in Gaza. Do you agree with that assessment?
I don't know. I mean, based on television, I would say not particularly, because those children look very hungry. But we're giving a lot of money and a lot of food, and other nations are now stepping up.
So maybe Trump's obsession with television has, in this case, maybe benefited him, though if that was the case, they wouldn't have gotten this far. He would have known what was already going on. But there's a recognition there of the starvation of Gaza. But again, I don't want to make it seem like, oh, this is fantastic. Now they're going to stop Israel from doing what they're doing. The U.S. government, you could argue, has been the reason Israel has been allowed to continue this genocide for as long as they have. Because they have had the protection of the U.S. despite many other countries being very clear about what's been going on well before this. You have the U.S. continuing to send weapons, send money to Israel as they have been committing a genocide. Now, France's Emmanuel Macron did come out last week to state that they are going to recognize Palestine as a state, which on its own, I would argue, isn't as big of a deal as some people are making it out to be. Many other countries, over 100 other countries, already recognize Palestine as a state. But this being a major one in France does have the potential to influence the dynamics around other G7 countries that have a close relationship with Israel. And you could argue we maybe are already kind of seeing that influence. So Barack Obama, a couple days later after France's announcement, is now finally coming out of retirement and recognizing what's been going on in Gaza, tweeting here, aid must be permitted to reach people in Gaza. There is no justification for keeping food and water away from civilian families. Again, it's unfortunate it has taken this long for a former world leader that people once had a lot of hope in to recognize this reality. But I'm showing this to show you that there is some movement here in terms of the recognition of what is happening. So Mark Carney, Canadian Prime Minister, was also asked about this.
Emmanuel Macron has announced that France will fully recognize Palestinian statehood later this year. Will Canada follow suit? And if not, why?
Well, the first thing is to recognize the scale at which we do and deplore the scale of the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Also the challenges in the West Bank. The lack of respect of the territorial integrity of Palestine and the West Bank.
That was the best part of his answer. And then he goes on to both sides this issue, which is insane at this point. But it is worth acknowledging that the questions are starting. There is beginning to be some pressure from what I would consider to be, mainstream press. Global News is a mainstream network in Canada. And Carney did come out to call Israel denying humanitarian aid in Gaza a violation of international law, which, again, these are strongly worded letters. All right. I'm not trying to give Carney too much credit here, but there is a shift in the narrative. And when you have the snowball begin to roll with Emmanuel Macron in France, I don't think it's crazy to assume that there is going to be a shift here in how these countries approach Israel. But it has come so very late. Like, we are at the point now where it's hard to imagine what life will be like for Palestinians that remain in Gaza for the foreseeable future, just because of the level of destruction that the Israeli government has created in that country. I just want to end on the one thing that has continued to frustrate me as somebody covering these issues from Propagandolf here. Another instance of the left being principled and correct from the beginning, only for liberals to inevitably come to the same conclusion years too late, and not a single one will admit they were wrong. It's been so frustrating to witness the scale of this when we were calling this out from the beginning. Well, before October 7th, I've been discussing the human rights abuses being committed by the Israeli government, the obvious, just the level of control that the Israeli government has had over Palestinians, the control over the borders, over the food, over the water, over the electricity, the obvious apartheid state. So to have to get to this point, it's just been horrifying, honestly horrifying. And it's become tougher and tougher to know what to say in these videos because I have covered this from every angle in every which way 100 times over. And we just need to see some actual change here. We need our world leaders to step up and do something. Because at this point, even when they do something, if they finally do something, it'll be too late. It shouldn't have got to this point.